Hey, welcome to this edition of Road Warrior. I'm your host, Grant Robertson. Now this week we add a little bit more pep in our typical step. Now I must not brag, I'm not a big fan of sports cars. After all, 4 children and a wife, you really want to take the minivan to the grocery store long before you hit the tarmac. But sometimes it does add a little bit more spring in my step and maybe a part in my hairline. Now behind me is the 2014 Chevy Camaro SS. Now obviously SS giving a little bit more badging to the overall standard model. Now we're going to take a quick look behind the wheel of this vehicle, kind of compare it to our recent test drive behind the wheel of the Dodge Challenger, with a little bit of comparisons between the two and really which one wins out in my opinion. Now for this data for you take every vehicle and maybe compare it to something that you really want to have called a minivan or an SUV. So when you find something like this with a 2-door styling in that 2+2 design on the inside, at the end of the day it means you're going to leave someone at home, but you got to draw on what you know, the minivans, the SUVs. So thankfully I was able to do that when you look at the overall numbers. Now by that it's about 190 inches overall with a 112-inch wheelbase. Thankfully that meant I felt like I was driving a big vehicle, therefore I could sleep at night leaving just a few of them at home while I was able to squeeze the other ones inside. Now by no means does the Camaro want to be a family hauler. Heck, that back seat maybe is just a niche. So that's my argument to the kids. Hey, one at a time folks, and make sure you have your tickets ready. Now one thing you can draw on and compare to maybe a minivan is the fact that it does really have big doors. Now it doesn't slide down the facade, but at least does swing open, giving you plenty of room to climb inside, just like the minivan days of throwing them in, putting on the DVD and going down the road. Now we'll talk about that little niche called a back seat in a minute, but who cares? We really only got room for one kid at a time in this vehicle. Now when you look at the overall height, heck, we're nowhere close to a minivan. It's kind of short, me being 6 foot tall. Heck, it's 4 or 5 feet, but who cares? No one needs height in this vehicle because it really needs to kind of go down the road. Now when you look at the overall numbers, again, it's a big vehicle and it's going to feel like it. Really, it's going to deliver something up front that a lot of vehicles don't do, called a massive hood. And don't forget, for 2014 it has that nice little vent port now to change it from 2013. Now when you swing around the back, the one thing the Caravans sometimes come with is this rear spoiler. Now there's a big difference when you come to this vehicle because that's going to help you give even better aerodynamics. Now before I swing around to the front and talk about a little thing called horsepower, there's one other feature you need to think about, and that is safety. Now they've equipped this vehicle with a backup camera and backup sensors. Now it seems a little bit of overkill on kind of a coupe vehicle, but really with this kind of low roof line, angled glass, and a fairly big rear deck lid, it does make for a kind of somewhat of a blind spot when you're backing up. Now obviously with all that equipped, it really makes it a lot simpler and a lot safer. Now if you're an avid minivaner like me, one of the biggest features you look for is that horsepower in the hood, because there's nothing better than a loud screaming minivan with a whole bunch of kids and an equal engine on the hood called a 4-cylinder. Now that's not really the case here because we're not hauling tons of people, but we are hauling tons of vehicle. This vehicle weighing just under 4,000 pounds, and again is fairly lengthy. Now this Camaro does come with 2 standard engines, either the kind of the base V6 or on the SS the bigger V8. Now by the numbers, it's a 3.6 liter V6 at the base model, delivering about 323 horses and 278 foot-pounds of torque. That compared here to the SS, which is going to take it up to 426 horses and 420 foot-pounds of torque on the 6.2 liter V8. Now the biggest question we always had is what's under the hood. Now I don't really want to kind of trivialize the V6, but really when people look at this vehicle with the menacing exterior, you really got to say, hey look, it's an SS or even a Z28 or something, and not necessarily the V6, because what's a muscle car like this without the real muscle? Heck, that's like a Caravan without the sliding doors. Now I can't help but take a moment and notice the sculpturing of this vehicle, really that front end kind of being the guerrilla warfare we always talk about. Now on an SUV, on a Denali or something, we're going to talk about all those riveted holes, that huge bug trapper called a front end. Now this one is called aerodynamic, and there's really nothing to really catch them. Bugs kind of envy this vehicle because they're going to fly right over. Now what you're going to really notice is kind of this menacing eye looking at you, these nice headlights, the airflow of course under this knifing front end. Now there's maybe no nostalgic here, maybe you really don't draw on the past, but who cares? I remember those vehicles, and I'd like to forget them just the same, because this is the new Camaro. Now as you sweep down, especially with that kind of vented hood we have on the SS, these nice sleek lines that kind of mimic down the hood. Now this is what everyone's going to see for about the split second when you are behind that Caravan, honking and waving at the children real nicely, watching the movie for free that's playing, but then of course you stomp the gas on the dotted yellow and pass them with ease. Now I know what you're thinking right now. Hey, swing around to the back and let's talk cargo, because that's what everyone wants to know. Who cares about the horsepower? And I'm with you, because what better way to go to the grocery store than in a Camaro SS? Now under the hood back here is pretty decent space. Now you're looking at about 11 cubic feet, and compared to the cousin, the Buick LaCrosse, it's going to only offer about 13, and that's supposedly a full-size sedan. So heck, we're not that far off. Now one thing we always talk about is smart key systems. Well, we don't need to talk about it here because it doesn't come with one. Now the problem with that is when you're carrying all those groceries in your hand and you try to reach in your purse, my pocket, that's going to be a problem. You're going to have to press this button right here. It's going to pop it open. Now once it opens, it's going to be old traditional coupe styling with kind of a small porthole here and kind of a vast cavern. Now really I found this to be actually a lot bigger than you'd expect. Now don't put any golf clubs in here, but for our video gear, we actually had plenty of tripods, camera equipment, all really shoved in this kind of small opening. Now the reason for the small opening, of course, is because of these huge haunches on the side, but really who cares? We still got plenty of room for all our knickknacks and those Lunchables from the grocery store. Now the last thing I look at on a vehicle, of course, are the tires. Now in a minivan, you might be lucky if you get 13, 14, maybe a tire spoke like on a bike, but of course on the SS, that's just not the case. Now a standard wheel average size on these vehicles is going to run 18, 19, or 20 like you see here on the SS model. Now as for the actual tread, it's going to be Performance 245 45s in the front and Performance 275 40s in the rear end. Now I mentioned just recently we got behind the wheel of a purple Dodge Challenger SRT8, and maybe there's not enough comparison between this vehicle and the other one with the color and one with a little bit more horsepower. That one being about 50 more horses. Now one thing we did notice on that vehicle is we burn out the wheels quite easily. Both of the vehicles coming with the automatic transmission. This one of course with the paddle shifters as well. Now one thing I did notice is the Challenger did sound a little bit more rumble under the hood. This one a little bit more sleek, of course, until you stop the gas. Now either way, 0 to 60 is what you make it. I just can't get the kind of nerve to go 0 to 60. I typically go 0 to 45, maybe pushing it about 47, kind of when no one's looking. Now the biggest feature about this car is its true muscle compared to the Challenger, or whatever you want to throw at it. It still is what you make it. At the end of the day, it's the exterior pizzazz coupled with the horsepower of the hood that's really going to deliver the kind of wow factor to anyone that's looking at it. Now when you take a first glance inside the Camaro SS, there is no draw on the past. This is the future. Now one thing you will notice is the gauges tucked down low. Now that's ideal for any gearhead, but for this kind of novice driver, that's something I appreciated, them being tucked out of the way, because I rarely looked at them. Now when you look at the rest interior, there are somewhat basic sports bucket seats with average bolstering and not too snug, really fitting any driver and passenger with ease. Now as for legroom numbers, you're looking at about 42 inches up front with kind of a anemic 29 inches in the rear. Now again, that's to be expected, kind of in this 2+2 like design, and really to accommodate backseat riders, it's going to require a little moving of the power seats. Now if you do want to find a blast from the past, look no further than the gauge cluster with this kind of antiquated huge speedometer and tachometer and kind of a retro-like styling. Now we did notice this kind of on the Challenger SRT8, but did also make a note that for 2015 they did go to more of an LCD-like setup. Now for this particular setup, there is actually a display in between the two gauges for a little bit more information, and what we really liked was that digital readout for the speedometer. Now on this particular model, there was a heads-up display as well, something we tend not to use a lot of because I like to look down and look at the gauges, but for those that want to kind of keep their eyes on the road, it is an added benefit. Now, one of the biggest features on any vehicle is going to be right down to the entertainment. On this one, it came with the MyLink system, a nice touchscreen LCD system that we really find to be the biggest and easiest to use on the market. Now, it does have a home screen, really, with the navigation, XM radio, the Pandora, a lot of features that really are easy to navigate with the press of a button. Now, another feature we've liked that they've kind of fixed on some of their systems is the fact that you can find ease of use with the presets, really finding them down low and navigating the whole system altogether quite well. Now, one thing they really did simplify on this vehicle is the climate control settings, really kind of taking it to a 2-knob system, huge vent control right here, and the temperature control on the right. Now, there are no dual climates up here, really not that kind of big of an issue. Now, one thing to think about is whether you go with a manual transmission or the as tested 6-speed automatic like we have here. Now, it does have a tap shifter. You shift it down into kind of the manual like mode, or it does have the paddle shifters I kind of alluded to earlier with the plus on this side and the minus to the left. Now, this vehicle is pretty much designed to the haunches, with really all the space being taken up by the seating, but there is just enough space for 2 cup holders up front and kind of a nice modest storage in between. Now, in this storage is going to be connectivity with a USB and a power adapter as well. Kind of can store the electronics in there. Now, one thing we did notice is besides the cup holders, there's just no other niches to kind of put your phones, really leaving everything exposed and sliding around as you muscle down the road. Now, one thing I always think about is the ease of ingress, and with the dual power seats up front, that kind of was a problem to get in the back seats. Now, traditionally with the manually operated it's kind of front seat, you can easily pull on a handle and slide it forward. Now, in this case, really to kind of move it forward, you're going to have to move the power seats this way, and so whatever. Now, there is one little handle here on the back of the front seat. You can kind of pull up on it and it will tumble it forward. Now, that's still only going to kind of leave a niche until you kind of power the seat forward, which does take just a little extra time. Now, again, we talked about the fact that half the family is going to have to stay at home in this vehicle, and that's more than evident when you look around into the back seat with that seating just for one over there and one here, kind of a 2+2 like design. Now, in the middle is kind of a hump. There is no, console. Now, in the back seats, it's going to be pretty much standard operating procedure for 2 people, really squeezing in kind of these bucket-like seats. Now, one thing we always want to think about, again, when we have enough kids like I do, leaving them at home and maybe want to go to the store and get some items, we really want to be able to kind of make a coupe into a cargo hauler. And could it be possible? Well, yes. With this kind of handle here, you pull that with ease, and this area really tumbles into a huge cargo back seat, something that makes this even rival a minivan. Now, one area that I did notice that seemed to be a little bit aggravating was right here at the bottom of the steering wheel. Now, I'd really prefer kind of an open-like approach to this bottom design, really allowing your hand to kind of ease right here in the middle. Otherwise, you're really stuck to the side, and it kind of made it a little bit more uncomfortable, especially when you're kind of maneuvering down the road. Now, some vehicles are actually kind of shear this off to kind of give you a straighter like approach. Now, what I really like for this to do is this area right here totally be gone, allowing you to kind of grip right here and muscle around the turn. That does for this edition of Road Warrior and a test drive behind the wheel of the 2014 Camaro SS, a vehicle I tried to compare to a minivan, but other than size, there's just no comparison. Now, it makes no apologies for leaving half the family at home, and again, when you sell tickets for this ride, only do one at a time, considering it's going to handle a pilot plus co-pilot fairly easy in that 2+2 like design. Now, as for the muscle on the hood, again, it fell short of the Challenger SRT8 we test drove a few months ago, but really it still has plenty of wow factor. Now, when you look at the overall design, of course, the Challenger to me is a little bit more nostalgic, while this one is kind of cutting edge and Transformer-esque. Now, again, I'd like to thank you for watching this edition of Road Warrior, and as always, keep both hands on the wheel and eyes straight ahead.